Greetings all! Today, we'll be examining the common normal-type Pokemon Patrat, the Scout Pokémon, and its relatively common evolution Watchog, the Lookout Pokémon. While they might not come off as anything other than creeps to some, the members of the Patrat family are territorial and curious beasts that rarely ever let anything out of their line of sight when on high alert. Patrat are small, semi-quadrupedal mammals with brown fur covering most of their form, save for the light brown fur in the belly and mouth area, having brown 3-digit hands and black 3-digit feet, and a tail that ends with a large tuft of white hair. They further possess a flat nose, a single massive incisor on the top of their mouth, small ears, and black eyes with black fur that wraps around their face, surrounded by rings of red and yellow flesh and fur. Their evolved form, Watchog, have the same sort of color scheme and structure to the eyes as Patrat, but sport a much larger, longer body with white hair on their feet and hands, an elongated neck and torso, and their bodies are mostly covered in dark brown hair with thick yellow stripes on their body that can glow brightly when needed. Similar to Sentret, Patrat and Watchog are extremely cautious, insecure creatures that will generally only appear outside when the weather is fair and there are no clear signs of predator activity. Since Patrat are among the weakest Pokemon in places like the Unova and Kalos regions, and their evolved form Watchog are among the weakest fully evolved Pokemon in those areas as well, they are constantly threatened by the presence of other creatures and are often a prime target for small and large predators alike in the natural environment. In order to help rectify this situation, Patrat and Watchog commonly live together in semi-large communities within small caves and hollowed-out trees for protection, and send out only a few scouts of both species to carefully patrol the immediate area every morning. If no threats are detected, then the community will be informed as such and will consequently begin to move outward in search of food. This is rarely easy to enforce in practice, however, as many Patrat do not possess as much patience as Watchog do, and are usually a bit less than adept when it comes to detecting objects outside of their field of vision, namely things that lay directly behind them. If a predator is detected, an immediate retreat will be made until at least 4 or 5 hours pass, at which point the process begins again. Not all members return to the nest, however. In addition to scouts, Patrat and Watchog communities also have permanent sentries that operate near the fringes of their territory, keeping a close watch to make sure that no new predators enter unannounced. Because their cheek tissue is relatively elastic, these creatures can store surprising volumes of food within their mouths at one time, thus allowing them to maintain the position for several days at a time before having to switch with a different Patrat or Watchog. As far as their abilities are concerned, as noted already, these creatures tend to be extremely skittish at a young age compared to their evolved forms, who eventually counter this by developing glowing patches of fur on their bodies, resulting in Patrat having access to run away as a base ability, while Watchog instead have Illuminate in their place. But both otherwise share incredible eyesight and in rare cases can analyze their opponents in battle with their keen observation skills to take advantage of any possible weak points, in turn possessing Keen Eye as another base ability and Analytic as a hidden ability. As far as the stats are concerned, in the case of Watchog, both these mammals can get access to some interesting moves as they grow and develop. They don't have a great deal going for them in this instance otherwise, as all of their base stats are below average for fully evolved normal-type Pokemon, and thus will have to rely on the wits and specialized tactics in order to make any sort of serious impact in battle. Patrat are relatively timid in comparison to their evolved form, and rarely ever attempt to handle larger opponents by themselves. Considering their incredible night vision and the ability to learn a variety of the hypnosis technique, avoiding such confrontations is something they have little trouble with. Patrat are usually friendly towards those they trust, but are otherwise reluctant to make new friends unless they can be absolutely sure of their own personal safety, making them relatively inefficient within multi-Pokemon battles. Despite their appearances, Patrat are not extremely outgoing even in their speech, preferring to use their tails to communicate with one another instead. The exact language of motion that comprises this interesting form of communication is still being studied intensely. Regardless of their disadvantages, however, Patrat are versatile creatures that can learn a wide variety of moves within a relatively short amount of time, including their powerful crunch attack shortly before evolution, making them a great asset to the teams of young trainers. Unlike the more timid pre-evolution, Watchog are outgoing creatures that will gladly use whatever tactics they might have to subdue and immobilize any opponent or predator before escaping. Upon evolving, these creatures gain the unique ability to initially learn an interesting variety of the Confuse Ray technique, followed by the Rototiller technique and the Psych Up technique later in life, which they learn in place of their pre-evolved form's Work Up technique. Once they become old enough to learn the Mean Look technique, Watchog can become frustrating opponents for average trainers to defeat if they can manage to keep the opponent crippled and unable to switch out. In combination with their powerful Hyper Fang and Slam attacks, as well as the potentially devastating low kick attack they gain access to after evolution, this sort of setup can be absolutely devastating. The only catch, of course, is that Watchog must survive long enough in battle to pull it off, which can be very difficult when faced with most fully evolved Pokemon. Interestingly enough though, Watchog still share the pre-evolved form a generally non-confrontational nature and will often give predators plenty of warning before resorting to battle, usually by raising their tails high into the air and emitting a low energy pulse within their fur in order to make it glow in an attempt to scare off predators. If that does not work, Watchog will spit the seeds of fruits they have eaten as warning projectiles in a last-ditch attempt to avoid fighting. This can prove to be a difficult pattern for some trainers to overcome when training Watchog, and is usually the prime source of trouble in battle overall. Lastly, it is known that Watchog do have a considerable advantage over most opponents in the dark because they have almost perfect night vision and can use the glowing patches of fur on their frames to illuminate themselves in the dark. Though this does not necessarily mean that they should only be battled within the dark, considering the limitations of human eyesight.
Well, these little critters might seem a bit intimidating to first-time trainers, but they can be overpowered in a lot of ways, and thus will really have to get sneaky to take advantage of you and your Pokemon. I find it adorable to see Patrats so vigilant and on the watch in their home, for they can be easily intimidated themselves, and thus can be easy pickings to counter. Even so, they do get powerful attacks early on to compensate, and thus can be a serious pain to deal with once they get close to evolving. Watchog take this even further in their attempt to give repeated and non-lethal warnings to any that get close to their nests, and for me, that just makes them creepier than threatening. Still, it would be best if I should not take them as a total joke, as moves like Hypnosis and Confuse Ray can make them great at heckling others if they can get the drop on them, or otherwise survive a harsh initial attack.
Though it might be hard to find them outside the few regions they call home, the members of the Patrat family can nonetheless prove to be a bit of a hassle to those that can't take them out quickly. You might be able to find some of the normal types that can work better as direct combatants, but the unique skills at the disposal of these beasts can nonetheless make them a challenge for young trainers to get past if they can't rely on brute force alone to take them down. Just do yourself a favor and don't take their cautious nature as a sign of weakness, although gladly use their bodies and teeth to leave a lasting mark on you to remind you to not get in their face with a sense of boldness or ego. Thank you all for watching this video. It is a great pleasure to share with you all the fruits of my research and all the positives it gives to understanding the wonderful creatures we call Pokemon and how their powers and behaviors function in their world. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more work like it, please give a like, comment, and or subscribe to the channel so you can get regular notifications on when new content is being uploaded. You can also find links to my DeviantArt page, Patreon, and Discord server in the description below. Please, join me on this road to seeing what the world of Pokemon has to share with us, and the many mysteries and wonders that keep us all coming back for more.